versus landman.
Are we ready? Okay, well, this is LD Gilbertz, and he is the land department supervisor for a privately held oil and gas company out of New Mexico, and he's going to talk to us today about some really interesting stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah. A little more background.
Oh, and when you're done, grab one of the little green sheets and fill it out.
On me, I'm a third generation rancher, south of Gilbertz. We have oil and gas development, uranium development, and for a while we thought we were going to have wind development. At this point we don't have any of that. But the surface and damage agreement that I'm going to talk about today is kind of get you guys up to speed. There's a lot of information here, so make sure you get a handout, please. You will need one, I'm sure. So,
Does anybody not have a handout? Okay.
and I have my cards up here if anybody wants one.
You might start by just telling me, what is a professional landman?
Basically, what we do, where I work, what I do, is we do a lot of surface use agreements, which is we go out and we negotiate damages for surface owners.
That's okay. Whoop.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to move that.
Okay. So basically, when I first started this job 10 years or so ago, most of us we went out and sat down with rancher or farmers table and talked about what we were going to do as we developed the oil, the methane on them, and then we negotiated the damages for access to their property and to be able to allow us to drill. So, but in the past, now it's kind of evolved. You know, I spend probably more than 50% of my time talking to their lawyers, not to them. So it's kind of evolved through the time. But it's interesting and challenging work. I think it gives me a good perspective because I have sat on both sides of the table because I've negotiated service use agreements for the ranch and all of that. So I know where these people are coming from, which helps, you know. So, and it's interesting, you know. Years ago, nobody knew what a landman was, you know, and I see now the university has a course on it, I guess, or is going to have a course. So that'll be good. And for people like you guys, the younger people, would be perfect for that. You know, it's a different avenue of a job. It still keeps you in the agricultural side of it. But it's pretty interesting. So I'm going to get back to the beginning.
You might have to hit the space bar on the keyboard. Now try it. Now try your clicker. Oh, they told me that would work. They lied.
Your point over here, though. That's what it's strange out to do.
Yeah, they told me that would work. Okay, well, I'll get you back there, and then we'll figure it out. Back up. How far would you burn?
Come on, keep going. Till the very, very beginning. Right there. Perfect. Now let me see if it works. It was working a little bit, though.
Bill, you working? Yeah, I don't. Okay, I'll tell you what.
But
If
I didn't turn it off.
I'm just not working.
Wait a minute, let me see this. Now I'm trying. Nope. Well, I get it green light, but I don't get anything else. There we go.
I don't know.
Okay, that'll work.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay, so as kind of an introduction, what I want to talk to you about is when you have a landman come up and want to visit you, there's some things that I think that, for me, I put on the table right away. It's like, are you affiliated with the Wyoming Association of Professional Landmen? Are you associated with the National Association of Professional Landmen? Just to find out their credibility, because if they're professional landmen, they should probably associated with one or both of them, like I am. When they come to visit with you, you need to be able to, you should ask for a copy of their lease that shows that they have the right to be there and the right to go ahead and enter into an agreement with you. And then hopefully they'll have a map that shows where their leasehold is, because I'm sure it's the same over here as it will be in our country, that a lot of times the leasehold may be, you know, completely surrounded by deeded minerals or partially surrounded, so they're going to have to cross these deeded minerals or some other lands of yours that they don't have leasehold on in order to get there. So you need to kind of lay that stuff out in the beginning so that everybody is on the same playing table and you understand where they're at. You know, most of them either will be contract landman representing a company or company landman like I am. So, so we'll start into this. Like I say, this is pretty, there's a lot of information here, and I hope I don't overload you with it. When we start at the top, we talk about the surface use agreement, and the agreement is made and entered into by, the surface owner and the company. Well, what happens here is, like, a lot of times when we first started out, it was like, okay, I'm John Doe, and, so you're gonna make the service use agreement to me. No, it has to be the owner of record. So, if John Doe has Doe Land Company, Inc., that's how the surface use will be, and he'll have to come in as like the president or whatever, acting member or whatever he is. But it has to be what is on record at the courthouse as far as the surface lands go. So that's pretty important there. And then the next part here talks about the whereas, and this kind of lays out things for you. This is the owner has the surface land, the operator has a federal oil and gas lease or state or a fee lease, or goes on down through there. But then when you get down to the paragraph that says, now therefore, in consideration of mutual promises contained herein and other goods and valuable considerations, that is the part that is binding and legal in court of law. If that paragraph right there isn't in there, it's not binding for either party. So, if you're looking at this and starting to do this, you need to make sure that that's in there, so that if they sign their name up to say they're going to do what they're going to do, they do that. And if they don't, then you have a legal mechanism to do that. So, and then it goes on to talk about the right of use. That the owner hereby grants the operator, his service companies, his personnel and stuff, the right to go in there, and that the wells will be at legal locations as set out by the Oil and Gas Commission, or if they have what's known as an exception location, so if terrain's bad or something, that they'll try to move them there. And it just basically says that, we're going to try to put them where they need to be, and tank batteries and compressors and that stuff. Now, when we go into number 2, we talk about notification and consultation. This really deals with the fact that you want them to come to you. If this part isn't in here, and you sign the oil and gas lease or the service use agreement, they can just go do what they want to. The consultation makes them come to you. You decide, mutually agree on where the roads will be, the locations will be, things like the pipelines, those kind of things, so that you have some control over what they're doing. So it's a mutually agreeable thing for the most part. So now in this one here, the term this is number 3 is probably one of the more critical parts that we have here. And this is because in the old days you signed a service use agreement, it had no end. Whether they drilled or not, it never ended. Now, like with this one, on this one here, this is mostly my personal one, is that if they don't do any drilling in 5 years, it dies. So they have to come back and renegotiate, so you're not dealing with terms that are 20 or 30 years old. So it's very important that that's in there as far as that goes. So, but if they drill a well, then the terms carry on. Number 4, we're going to deal with non-exclusive rights. So these are right-of-ways, and they're not easements. Where an easement, like a power company puts in or the highway department puts in, those are binding and and an encumbrance on the property actually. Where a right-of-way is not. And you don't want to, especially you don't want an exclusive easement, because in essence, if you gave somebody an exclusive easement, they could actually keep you from driving on your own property, on your own lot, because you gave them that right to use that for themselves only. So, you want the ability to have non-exclusive rights, so that, say you have another oil well company come to you, and you say, okay, I want you to use this same road. That allows you to tell them, use this road, don't create another road right beside it. So that's pretty good. And of course, number 5 is compliance with laws, which is Wyoming Oil and Gas, the DEQ, the Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, depending on whose jurisdiction we're in and what we're doing. Number 6, we're going to go into compensation. Now, this is a large oil and gas location, okay? We're talking like 400 by 500. So the way this one was set up is it was set up for 4 acres and $10,000 for the 4-acre site. So, and then as you'll see, when we go down through here, then it reverts back to 2 acres for a $5,000 annual after the wells drilled, the pits are backfilled, and the tank battery set. And as we go down through there, then I'll show you here in a minute how we compensate for over on either one as it goes. So then in B, we talk about road access. Now, these are big roads. You know, it's not like a two-track. It's going to be 16 feet wide with ditches, so you could be up to 40 feet wide. And right now, the going rate is $10 in, you know, initial and $10 annual. So there's some fairly different numbers than we've used to. We have pipelines next in C, which these talk about. The size has something to do with it here, because $15 for in excess of 6 inches and $10 for 6 inches or less, because the bigger the pipeline, the more area they've got to disturb and put in. So, and then it goes back, both of them go back to a $750 annual. Okay? Then we talk about D, about they get a producing well, and they're going to have a tank battery, oil, gas, other liquids, you know, maybe a compressor on site. But here we're limited to 2 acres rather than the 4 they started with. Okay, and so that will be at a $5,000 per, and it's in advance. They never pay behind. They always pay their annuals for the coming year, not behind themselves. So, and then we talk about an E in the event the operator needs drilling water, and say you have a place to provide it. Okay, here's the thing that most people don't understand. Unless you allocate water from the state of Wyoming, once it's there, it's the state's water. It's not, you know, I may have a reservoir full of water, but that's really not my water unless I allocate it from the state of Wyoming. So what we do typically is we charge access to the water. Then it becomes the oil company's responsibility to allocate it, or how they're going to get it from the state to them. So we're not charging for water. We're charging for access to water. If that makes sense. So because if you start selling the state's water, you know, you could stick yourself in a heck of a pickle. So, but you know, and usually this is, if you have the water. If not, they'll find someplace else to get it. We professionally on the other side of the table, a lot of times we'll go in and we'll drill a water well, and then we'll make a deal with the landowner and we'll use the water out of it to drill our wells, and then at some point the water well reverts to the landowner. So he gains something out of that also. So in fact, we just did that.
But a question on that, so I've got a stock dam full of water, but I can't sell that water.
No, belongs to the state of Wyoming once it hits the ground, unless you allocate it.
Okay.
And they just,
Question following up on that, but he has stock water in that pond, and then he has a certain right for his stock,
yes,
for the amount of water that he has
That's right.
in that pond.
that's right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you can use it for what it is designed for, stock water, you know, it's just runoff. But you can't sell it.
Okay.
So, like I say, what we do is basically, you sell access to it.
Yep, okay.
And it keeps you in the clear and that. And so, then the next thing we'll talk about is buried power lines and telecommunication lines, which you just have $15 per rod one-time payment. And then we go to overhead power. Now, when your oil company comes in and they get a producing well and they want overhead power for their facilities, that is done through, like we have Powder River Energy, I don't know what the local cooperative here is.
Pacific Power and Light.
Yeah, PP&L, okay. So PP&L will go in there and they will negotiate an easement across you to put the power line to get it to the oil company. Now, but chances are that's going to be like $10.50 a rod or something, one-time payment. So we have where the power line is no use to me as a landowner. We said, okay, you're going to put the power line, fine. We know that the PP&L is not going to pay me, but you're going to pay me for that power line to be on my property, because I don't need it. It's of no use to me. And so that's why you'll see here, it's $2,000 a linear mile per year. So it's, and you know, because it's there, it's of no use to us. You know, I mean, that you created an easement, so you have an encumbrance on the property and some other things. So we've kind of headed down that road, okay? And then in H, we talk about surveying, staking, wildlife, botanical, all of those things that you don't have to do as much for a fee or state well as you do for a federal well. In the case of a federal well, you've got to do ARC studies, you've got to do wildlife studies, you've got to do species studies for plants, and then the BLM will come out 3 or 4 times with the oil company and want to look at it, and you'll be involved in that. So it just creates a lot of traffic, unnecessary traffic, because even when they get to that part, and they submit their APD to the BLM, currently in Wyoming, I think they're over a year behind from the time APD's put in until it gets approved, you know. So you've got a long stretch there, you know. So we have went to charging an access fee to get in there and use, you know, because you're knocking down grass and you're taking up the rancher's time and all of that. So there's a little compensation there for anything that happens. Now, on state and fee, it's not quite as bad. You can go out there and stake the well as long as it's a legal location or even an exception location. As long as you do the service owner in agreement, then you can just submit it to the state of Wyoming and you're fine. Then we'll go out into I, which is the operator shall prorate annual payments so that this is something that is, we've got into, and you can do it this way or not. A lot of times you'll see your surface use agreement is written to the fact that, you know, it's on the initial payment, then that becomes the anniversary date. But for this agreement, what we did is we prorated it so the payment falls the same time every year. It's prorated, like, see, this is the March 15th. So say you have 2 or 3 wells, on March 15th, you're going to get paid for all the wells at the same time, which actually makes them easier to track than being staggered through the 12-month period, because you should be able to look at it as a whole rather than individually as it comes through. Then we go into J. This is called a CPIU, which is a Consumer Price Index for urban America. What this does, this is on a 3-year CPIU. So every 3 years, depending on the Consumer Price Index, I've never seen, well, I did see it go down 1 year, but it keeps climbing. So then, say the 3-year CPIU average is 5%, then all of your payments go up 5% every 3 years, or whatever the CPIU is. So that keeps you current in the market, and you don't have 20-year-old payments that the rest of the world's outgrown on you. So it's just a mechanism to keep you designated in. And when you talk about a CPIU, there's urban America, there's Western America, there's all kinds of them out there, and their numbers and their increases are different depending on where you're at. So you might want to look in to see exactly what CPIU fits your area, because it may be higher than urban America. So then we'll go into number 7, and this is road construction and use. And this talks about you know, you want the operator to use existing roads. And where we get into this is, you know, we all know what snows and the wind blows in our country tremendously. And so, you know, we may have a road on a ridge, and the reason it's on the ridge is because it blows clear snow. So we want you to put your road there, so that, because that's the best place for the road. You know, we got 50, 100 years of fighting snowdrifts, so we know where the road should go. So it just helps to use some of our knowledge from our agricultural base to them. So, and then number B, we talk about they shall all be gravel. And they call it shale, they call it scorial, whatever you want, red rock, whatever you want to call it. And we pretty much eliminated that out of all of ours. We make them use river gravel, limestone, you know, something that's going to hold up, and it's not hard on your tires, and it's not near as dusty, and it's just a lot better use of the time. Now, then here's where we talk about the width of the roads. They're 16 feet for the traveling service and 40 feet from ditch to ditch. The reason they're so wide is because you may have 2 semis passing on it, and 16 feet is not really much for 2 semis either. So they got to have room, or you're going to have them in the ditch, and that's going to be worse yet. Indeed, we talk about access to lands from public roads, you know, adjacent owners, where we put in there that, you know, a swinging gate, metal gate in addition to a cattle guard. So we have them put in a cattle guard and then put a gate across the top of it. So if you need to, if it fills up with snow or mud or something, you know, you can close the gate, or if you got horses in there, which if they jump cattle guards like I've had a couple of do, you might want to keep the gate closed. Questions? You're awful quiet. Is this just too much information? Okay. Then we talk about culverts, putting those in. And we talk about off-road travel, you know, that if they're having to drive around a big hole in the road, and, you know, then that's creating unnecessary off-road travel. So then we're going to go into ND. We talk about control of weeds, debris, litter, and then we say, well, you're going to conduct periodic trash pickups. which does. I mean, and you'll see this, and this is just the nature of the business and then the people. You know, the rancher drives up and here's the pumper there, and they see a 5-gallon bucket in the ditch. They go, well, why'd you throw that bucket out? And the pumper's gonna say, well, I didn't throw it out. It's not mine. You know, so this is a little incentive here to have them help control this, because it says right here, if the owner is required to pick up operator's trash, operator shall pay the owner $100 an hour to pick it up. So if they don't want to do it, I'll go do it. So usually they're really good about it, though. We don't have much trouble with it. So, okay, now here we're talking about non-exclusive rights of roads again, so that you can, multiples can use them, including yourself. We talk about signage, so you gotta have no trespassing signs and no hunting signs or whatever you want. That makes their responsibility to put them signs up and keep them up and maintained. So, because the problem is you've created an access into your property. And if it's not posted, and I may be wrong here, but as far as I know, if it's not posted, you can't charge them trespass. It's gotta be posted. So, this is another thing that they do. So, and and Jay talks about the ability to lock the gates, and then, you just daisy chain the locks here and there so that you got access and they do too. And then in K we talk about maintenance of roads. That the operator will keep the lands to the reasonable satisfaction of the owner, which maintenance may include ditching, graveling, blading, mowing, and those kinds of things. So they got to keep the road in good shape and spraying for noxious weeds. This is something I'll tell you that we see all the time. Is that they will be free of weeds. Now, that's something, to be free of weeds is almost impossible, especially when you build a new road. But you got to take care of them. The noxious weeds are the bigger problem. Once you get your grass seeded and coming up, then it'll choke out like the Russian thistles and that kind of stuff. But the Canadian thistles, some of those, they're not going to go away. The buffalo burr, they need to be taken care of. So. And then number 8, we're going to talk about well sites. See, and of course we talked about the 4 acres we talked about earlier and the 2 acres after everything is done. And here's where this proration comes in. And it says the operation will pay the owner the additional sum of $2,500 per acre or fraction thereof for in excess of 4 acres, and the same thing for in excess of 2 acres. So if they end up with 4.5 acres for their drill site, then they're going to pay you at this prorated rate for that other half an acre. The same if their tank battery is bigger than the 2 acres, then there's a mechanism for them to pay for that extra acreage. Say that. Because a lot of times they don't have this helps the landowner and it helps the oil company, because then we have a mechanism in order to be able to, if we need a little bit more room, get it and still compensate the rancher for it. And in B we talk about the well site and being fenced, and of course we talk about litter and debris and trash and hydrocarbons, Then in C we talk about if you get it what's called a dry hole, and basically it talks about restoration of the surface and things like that. So, and closing the reserve pit. And in D we talk about a commercial well, and then how about cleaning up the location. Should restore the well site with seed mixtures that the rancher wants. So if he's got a special seed mix he likes, or something that, like the seed mix we used was helped through the University of Wyoming, but that's been like 30 years ago. It probably needs to be improved again, because they probably learned something from that. So, and it talks about restoring it all back there, and stock tight fences and then pipelines. It talks about the following specs. They're going to avoid unreasonable interference with the owner's agricultural operations. So, especially over here in this country where you have a lot more crops than we have, that says that no, you won't run the pipeline down the middle of the alfalfa field, or you take it over here and put it on the side and go down the fence line. And that's just in there so that you have that ability to talk to them about that, so that it doesn't interfere with your stuff. And it talks about backfilling and repacking, reseeding, contouring, and a lot of times we'll see something that you put in a pipeline and then you'll get a call 2 or 3 years later and part of that pipeline is just fell and you'll have a little bit of a ditch and you just have to fix it, but this clause is in there to make sure that the operator does that, and it's not a problem with them. And then it talks about separating topsoil, which is real critical in our country. We got maybe 2 to 6 inches depending on the area. So, you got to keep it so you can get something to grow when you're done. So we make them stockpile it separately from the spoils piles. Then that way you can put it back on top when you're done. Let's see what else we have. And then in D, we talk about as-built maps. Because these aren't meets and bounds, these are usually GPSed in. But all the oil companies have access to maps, and they can provide you with one so you can see the route, like the pipelines in the road. It just is a really good tool for them to provide you with a map. And then a lot of times they should all the way down through the line as they're developing their lease. See, and then here we talk about operator reserves the right to occupy, use, and cultivate the land affected by such pipelines. Okay, and as long as it doesn't interfere with the operator's operations, the owner can do that. So, then we talk about compensation. Then we get into service damage for pipelines serving lands other than those of the owner. Then you go back and you negotiate a separate agreement. You can't just say, okay, we got a pipeline agreement for your neighbor's land, and so we have a pipeline agreement. We're just going to go from me to you to him. Well, this paragraph right here says, sure you will, but you'll come back and talk to me about a separate pipeline agreement. It's not covered under my SUA. And then in H, we talk about if an operator fails to use a pipeline in excess of 24 consecutive months, the pipeline should be deemed abandoned and becomes the property of the surface owner. And we had a case happen in Gillette here not too long ago about that. A company failed to use it. Was a gas company. Used a pipeline. It was a big long pipeline on this rancher, and they failed to use it. And the rancher took control of it. Well, then they come back and wanted to use it. They had to renegotiate for their own pipeline. So it happens. So then we'll talk in I. We talk about final termination of any pipeline and how you're going to remove the hydrocarbons or environmentally safe. And then when they do abandon them, then like I say, it goes back. Then the company should give the surface owner a bill of sale, and that turns the pipeline over to him.
LD?
Yeah.
Do you have, or should you get a statement or a release from the DEQ on the abandonment of these lines or the reserve pits or anything where there was potential hazardous material?
Well, okay, when we talk about the pipelines, typically they'll purge them, basically they should have oil and water or gas. Should all you should probably ever be dealing with, and for conventional oil. It might be high pressure gas, and it might be low pressure gas. And I know a lot of the high pressure companies, they'll use liquid nitrogen to purge their line, And I know when I worked with a pipeline company years ago, we did that when we abandoned some lines too. Purged them with nitrogen and left them full of nitrogen, which helps kind of preserve them also. Because the pipeline company I worked for was a crude oil pipeline company, so the pipes weren't internally coated. So it was just bare metal on the inside. So, but as far as the DEQ goes, I can't honestly say when we purge lines and abandon them, we do that, and cap them off below ground, and I guess unless you had some reason to believe there was something there that was hazardous. If it was, I would, either get with the company or get with the DEQ or something. So, and then in J, in the event owner desires to cross the operator's pipeline. So say you have a pipeline in there and the oil company's laid it in there to get their oil out or whatever, okay? And then all of a sudden you decide you want to lay a stock line and it's going to have to cross this. What J does for you, it asks them to go dig up their pipeline. Doesn't put the responsibility on you. They'll dig it up so you can cross it safely. So you're not, especially if it's a gas line and you hit it, it might not be very pleasant. So, and now we're going to talk about power lines. That the operator will consult the owner and the independent power company as to where the lines are going to go. avoid, visual landscape and future ranching operations and that. And, and the companies really are pretty good anymore. I'm dealing with one now, and on my surface use agreement, I put it in there that if you get power over to this well, you're gonna let me get power. But I'll have to buy my own power. But I'm gonna be able to put a pole over because I've got an old windmill right behind it, about 200 feet. I'd like to have submersible on, So I wrote that in there, that the ability that they'll set a pole over there for me. I'll have to have my own meter, but I can then put power to my water well, my stock well. So they're really good about working with you for the most part. And then we talk about underground power lines. I don't know over here in my country, the rural cooperative will not bury them because they don't want that responsibility. Now some of the bigger oil companies, they'll bury them on their own. But as far as the rural people, the Rural Electric Association, they won't bury them. There's too much liability and too much danger. So, but for some funny reason, and I'm not an electrician, I barely can turn the light on, but buried underground power gains as it goes underground. Something about it traveling under the ground, it becomes stronger, not weaker, the further it goes. So they would have to put transformers in to drop the power back down, and they just don't want to do it. And see, and here's where we talk about installation of our own meters, So to be able to do that for your water well, or if you got something close by that you want to do with it. Okay. See how I agrees to run power to the water stock well. There it is right there. So, and in 11 we talk about operations. Operations on the land should be conducted according to the following. Here we go back to safe and in good order, control of weeds, litter, tree, noxious weeds, upon reasonable demand of the surface owner. So and I've had this problem on my place with some buffalo burr that it's almost impossible to spray it and kill it. You about got to chop it, bag it, and burn it. And so well, we sprayed that, and well, yeah, you sprayed it, didn't kill it. So now let's go back and do it. So that's what this sentence here says, is that the reasonable demands there of the owner. So if it didn't kill it, then you got to go back and do it again, or you can go do some other means to get rid of it. So, and B talks about a time frame to get things reestablished. In 6 months. You can't wait 2 years and you got all these weeds laying out there that need to be taken care of. You got a weed patch and not need grass growing. So, C talks about cattle guards and keeping them in good repair. D is where Jimmy you asked about that. And if you look at D, it talks about noxious, reduction of toxic or hazardous chemicals, and how they're supposed to handle them, and they have to let you know, and just so you got a feel for that, what's going on there if something does happen. And then E talks about the minimum amount of vegetation, and we talk about topsoil conservation again. So, and no construction of routing and maintenance activities be performed during periods when the soil is too wet. So if you get a 4 or 5 day soaker, which we wish we got, you can always say, no, you're not going in here now. You got to let this dry up and not cause big ruts. Just trying to do their construction. Okay, and then this G talks about light shall be painted, to blend the natural landscape. So you don't want to put pink tanks or something out there. So, but most everybody's pretty good at using the desert tan or some combination thereof. No living quarters except during drilling, and workover operations. So, and I talks about fences. They can't just decide to build a fence across the road. Maybe they want some control issues or something without the owner's consent. We talk about stock tight fences and dangerous areas arising from oil and gas operations, including pits, trenches. And an issue about trenches is typically when they're trenching and they don't get it all done in one day, they backfill behind them, but you'll have a certain maybe 50, 100 foot that's still open, and typically they'll just go in and put temporary fence around it for the night so they can start operations the next day. And we've had really good luck with that. So, So that may be something you run across if you go through this, so. And then, in K, we talk about leave gates as they are found. So, if it's closed, close it. If it's open, leave it open, And we run into situations where where they left the gate open and it was closed and cattle got out. And then you get a situation where it was supposed to be open so they could get to the other side of the water and somebody closed the gate. So, it does happen. And then if they do leave the gate open and you have to go gather your cattle, it's $100 an hour per man to go get it back in. We had a situation up there like that where, and this was a big ranch. They left the gate open and I want to say 800 yearlings mixed with his mother cows. So they had a hell of a mess. Yeah, they got it done. So, and so then we go into L, and this is where you restrict the firearms, no dogs, no hunting, no fishing, no recreational vehicles. And the operator will notify all his contractors and subcontractors of this part here. So, and then under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And then the very last part of that sentence says that, if you violate the provision, then I can run you off and you can never come back. So it's got some teeth to it. So then in M, we'll talk about, M talks about existing laws. You got to conduct their operations in accordance with all existing local, state, and federal laws and regulations. And then N, we talk about no open fires. When you talk about preventing fires, having fire extinguishers on site, and a shovel, and compensating the owner for damages in the case of a fire. And I think in this one, this is, and that includes outlocation, occurring owners for suppression and replacement of fences and other properties, in addition to $35 an acre. Some of it's an acre, and some is a tonnage of hay or something. It's just a replacement for the grass. This is one that has really become an issue. Which is dust suppression, because it is a big deal. We've seen it, especially down in the southwestern part of the state. They had a lot of trouble with dust, and Campbell County's had its own share of problems. But water, whether it's water, mag chloride. Granted, we'd all love to be able to get mag chloride because you put it down and then it's good. And over there we found in the county, put it on a bunch of the county roads. And they found out then, it'll get holes in it and stuff because it kind of, I don't know if you know what mag chloride is. It's a chemical we put on the road and it kind of seals the road and creates any dust. Really creates no dust at all when it goes on. But the county found out that they thought, well, once it wears out, it wears out. Well, then they found out that they could go in and blade it back up and wet it down and it resealed. So it's helped our county roads immensely. So pretty impressive stuff. But the problem with mag chloride for us is most of it comes out of Rock Springs. So, and it comes on a train, so it's kind of tough. The expense is getting it here, so, and being able to handle it once you get it here. And then this one in P deals with stacking equipment, stacking rigs on the property. They drill a well or something, and then they just pile it over on the side of the location and leave it. This doesn't allow them to do that, or we can designate a more reasonable site for stacking rigs. And typically, if you go in, somebody wants to stack a rig or something like that, or make a lay-down yard for a pipeline or something, they'll come back and they'll compensate you, pay you at the same rate as your locations or whatever, to have the ability to mow, to mow their pipes or their rig or whatever they need, a little closer to where they want to be. And this says 2,000 an acre there for just a mowing site. So, and Q talks about speed limits. You can impose whatever speed limit you want. A reasonable speed limit, 25. We see 25 pretty constantly. So, I got to tell you this. And one of the landowners I work with down there, she's has a pretty good reputation. She owns her own radar gun. So there's no question in her mind if you get caught by her. So, and she has quite the fine too. So, in S we talk about calving and lambing pastures, and this is something you want to think about. And for us over there, that's typically, and hunting season, maybe you're gonna say, oh, I don't want any drilling activities the first 2 weeks of October or something, so that you can run your hunting operation without 24/7 traffic. Or maybe during a certain time, planting or harvesting or something, I don't want this extra activity when I'm trying to get my trucks in and out and get the beets or whatever to market or whatever we're doing, you know. So those are something to think about when you're putting this together. So see, this one, this is a calving pastures April 1 through June 1. And then in T is after construction, they're going to do what's called as-bills. So for some reason, during what they were doing, they had to move a pipeline to avoid a rock or do something different. They'll come back with, this is really where the pipeline went, or this is really where we laid the road out. You know, this is where we talked about that this is the actual location of it, so that you know those. And then U talks about the termination of the agreement, you know, the material terms of this agreement. That you got to tell the people from the oil field side, you got to tell the people working for you what this says, you know, so that they don't get themselves in trouble right off the bat because they didn't know they couldn't do that. So they didn't know they couldn't bring their dog or whatever it may be. And then 12, the limitation of rights. So that's not be used in connection with operations on other premises not owned or leased by the operator without the owner's consent. That's what we're talking about, building roads over to the neighbors or pipelines or something like that. I mean, it just limits them to your property for your SUA. Produce water. This is an issue in some places and it is not, but this prevents them from putting produced water in pits. They have to reinject it. Whether here, whether they make a deal with me or make a deal with somebody else, they got to reinject it instead of putting it on surface pits. Okay. Dry hole water. So we're talking about the water again, you know. And then we talk in here that this is really kind of sticky on the oil company where it gives them 30 days written notice to take over the well. This phrase came a lot from the methane wells because they weren't that deep. But in a conventional oil well, the state of Wyoming is going to make you set a series of plugs going up the hole. So, I mean, the company will be glad to let you take it over, I'm sure, but then you probably have to go back in and drill a couple plugs out to get it where you can, you know, because they can plug it all. It stages all the way up. So, and the company doesn't have any options in that. So, seismic operations, they're subject to a separate agreement. So, if you have a seismograph company come in that wants the seismic on you, then typically you negotiate. You don't negotiate with the leasee. You negotiate with the seismic company. But if that allows for seismic, then they don't have to negotiate. If it's written in there, it gives them the right to go. So you want to make sure that you're handling this as a separate item. And then the same with compressors. If they're going to take up a bunch more room, then you're going to have to go consideration for them. And extraordinary damages, you know, and acknowledged by the owner is sufficient and in full satisfaction for the damage to the land. So, and then it's agreed does not relieve the operator of liability due to operator's negligence or due to spills or discharges of any hydrocarbons, okay? So, or loss of livestock arising from operators' oil and gas operations. And this phrase talks about replacement of livestock at current market value or replacement cost, whichever it may be. So, reclamation and reseeding. You didn't think these were this long, did you? This talks about, you know, restoring the surface of the land and termination of operations and making sure to put it back as possible the contours were there, and the use of water bars and other measures to avoid erosion and non-source pollution. My company, I'm really proud of, and this is something I've done since I've been there, is if we go in and we plug a well or abandon a road, I continue to make the annual payments on that until it's all restored and I've got it completely released. You know, I don't try to get it released, you know, and we've just seeded it or something. We wait, get grass established, get everything back the way, as close to the way it was, and then I'll release it, you know, and to the surface owner, and that takes care of this problem with the erosion and all of that. So, and then there's another seeding with suitable grasses or crops, selected by the owner, the reseeding at the rate determined by the owner, and during the planting period, selected by the owner, so. And in C, we talked about, it should be the further duty of the operator to inspect and control. We talked about weeds again. Weeds is really a big deal. It really is. It's, in our country, it's, you know, it seems like Canada thistles and something like that, they can, there be nothing there, and all of a sudden you disturb the ground and you have them, so, I don't know. Or they come in on a truck. I know that one ranch that we worked on, when we went in there to drill, we had to take the vehicles all to the car wash and wash them underneath and everything, you know, so we weren't bringing some weeds onto their property. They were close to where there was leafy spurge, and so they wanted to make sure that that truck didn't go up there and get in some leafy spurge and carry back the seed back over to their ranch. And I can understand that. That's leafy spurge is, what do you do with it? Goats, I guess. So, this is more about weeds here. And D here talks about conclusion of operation activities, culverts and cattle guards and stall operator shall remain in place and become the property of the owner, or shall be removed at owner's discretion. So if they put in, you know, a road that could be of use to you on the ranch, and they went through a cross fence or something and put a cattle guard in, and you want to leave it, this gives you the ability to do that. Indemnification. This is what, you know, to the maximum extent permitted by the law, operator will indemnify, defend, and hold the owner, and if applicable, owners, members, officers, directors, blah, 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 and on it goes, harmless from any claims, liabilities, demands, suits, losses, damages, and costs, including without litigation, and the attorney's fees, all of that. So, you know, so that you can't be drug into a lawsuit that the oil company got drug into. Okay. And then we talk about the release here, which under the law, personal injury, death, property damage. And then 21 talks about designated contacts. It's good to have a contact name and a number. I mean, a lot of times you won't get, you know, we put my agents put their personal names on that line. My land ain't stupid when they signed it, because they actually signed this agreement with the surface owner. And you know, we're pretty consistent in our company. A lot of companies, the land people change somewhat, you know, especially if you're dealing with a Denver or a Houston or something. But still, you have a contact name and numbers, but you need somebody to call and some phone numbers, so if something happens, you can get a hold of somebody, you know. And what you'll see locally is the guys that are in the field every day, you know, you'll get to know them, they'll get to know you, and you'll have their phone numbers, and you know who they are. And it's really pretty easy. And here's your assignment in 23. So, well, only in connection with the assignment of the oil and gas operations, okay? Promptly notified and such assignment, and identity of the assignee together with updated contact information. So you want to know who's coming in, you know, say the oil company drilled well and now they've sold the lease to another company, then this requires them to make that notification to you. So you know who's driving around out there. Notice and cure breaches, okay? We have two different things. We talked about, you have monetary and non-monetary breaches. A monetary breach, you'll say they didn't make the annual payments, okay? So now you have a breach of this because they got to pay them, you know, annually. And so you have them, which is easy to fix, you know. Usually, oh, we didn't make that payment, somebody will cut a check and get it in the mail to you that day, you know, and get you taken care of. Non-monetary is when we talk about things like reclamation and stuff that, you know, okay, well, you reclaimed it, but grass didn't go, so now you got to go back. And those are non-monetary defaults, you know, but they still have to all be cured. So that's something to keep in mind. And I don't know if I wrote it in this one or not, if it has a monetary or non-monetary. No, I didn't. It's not this one. Okay, and then dispute resolution. And in this one it says, the mediation, this talks about mediation in occur in Campbell County, or whatever county you're in, you know, so you're not traveling halfway across the state for mediators. So, and the thing about mediation is non-binding. If you go to arbitration, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, and there'll be something there, and you're stuck with it. So, you know, arbitration is not really very good for either side, you know, or at least I don't think so. And then we have the binding effect. It's binding on successors, heirs, and assigns. so that you turn it over to your kids, or your parents turn it over to you, and the land becomes yours, the oil company is still bound by this, or the oil company sells that lease, then you're both still bound by it. You know, it doesn't, just because something changes hands, as long as it's heir successors or signs, it doesn't, you know, it's still in effect, so. Applicable law, this agreement shall be construed under the laws of the state of Wyoming. That's pretty, very simple. Recording, and I have the memorandum here, but we treat these all as confidential agreements. We don't share them with anybody. I mean, and we get calls, hey, you know, so-and-so did your agreement with him, like another oil company. Oh, you know, you made this agreement with so-and-so, can you give us a copy of it? And we go, no, we can't. We're bound by the confidentiality that we feel is in this. Now, we tell them if the rancher wants to give it to you, that's their business. But we're not going to give it to you. Even with the rancher's consent, we won't do it because the confidentiality we feel is there. Because what you'll see, and I'll talk about this in we're just about done here. Recording, so we talk about the recording, and entering into the agreement set forth the entire integrated understanding of the parties regarding the matters addressed herein and supersedes any previous communications, oral or written. So, you know, if you're out there talking about something and you end up, when you get to SUA done, it's different, that conversation doesn't really matter, because this paragraph here says, you know, this is the entire agreement. And severability, if part of this agreement is deemed illegal or enforceable, said provision shall be deemed modified and amended to the extent necessary to accomplish the intent of the parties. So, and that page is blank. Now, this is my experience with PowerPoint. See, the font changed terribly. so here, but this is where you'll sign, okay, and then, and this is basically an exhibit. When you, depending on what you got, we usually attach a separate page as Exhibit A, which would be the legal description of the wells. And then you may have an Exhibit B, which may be something that you're describing, like a particular, like in a road agreement, we will just have a map that is just a map of the road, plus we will have the legal description of where the road travels. So you may have two or three exhibits, okay? And what else? Yep, that's it. As far as the surface use agreement goes, a couple of things I guess I want to say here is that there are a lot of things that lights and noise. We didn't talk about this, but I had a rancher come up to me one day and he goes, "You know that compressor site you went over there? That light shines right in my mother's window at night." And you know, and so there you can put things in there that says, you know, no lights except for necessary and emergency lights. Or we put in agreements about hospital grade mufflers for equipment to keep the noise down, you know, because it's close to the house, or prevailing winds carry it towards the house or something. So there's a lot of things to take into there. I'm trying to look if I missed anything. No, that's pretty much it. But you know, the thing about it is and I tell my land folks this, is that never draw a hard line in the sand. You can usually, if people are willing to negotiate and talk about things, you can usually work your way through things to the mutual satisfaction of everybody. You know, but if somebody draws a hard line in the sand, it's tough to do that. So it's something. And when you're doing these, it's important to realize that it's going to be give and take. It's kind of like horse trading, you know. And some things may be more important to you than others. Like in the case of, okay, this had a 3-year CPIU in it. So you go, okay, well, I really want this. And they're going, so you may say, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go to a 5-year CPIU if you'll do this for me. And usually there's some way to work that out and make it so everybody can live with it. So that's, you know, there's compromise on both sides. So it's interesting work, I'll guarantee you. So now I want to show you a couple other things. Oh, how do I get out of here?
While you're doing that, if
Yes.
I might ask you, I mean, you've spent most of your life working for the mean, nasty oil company.
I have 35 years.
You know, like this agreement we just looked at, it says, as the landowner, I get some say in where the pipeline goes or where the road goes. Do you sometimes run into really unreasonable people that say, well, I want that road to go clear around here 15 miles just because it protects my, I don't know, something?
Yes, they will, yes. I mean, yeah, it's, and it does happen, and it's difficult to try to overcome those things sometimes. But I'll give you an example. I had a lady that was impossible to deal with, and she had like, I don't even think it was 40 acres. I mean, totally impossible. And I worked for 4 years to get a surface use agreement that she finally did. And it so happened, and that's a good point. Vernon's going to talk about split estate and bonding and all that real quick. Finally, I used the Split Estate Act to get in there to do the lease because I have that option. Well, you know, once I did that, then it kind of went out of her hands. And I remember when she got served with her split estate notice that her attorney called me the very next day and said, hey, here's the deal. You know, you've been in on this deal. It's been 4 years. We have nothing. I said, I have all good faith negotiations here that I've done and what I'm trying to do. And he said, can you give us a week? And I said, if we have ink by Friday, you got a deal. And of course, I had already got the bond in place. We were going to go. Friday came and we came to an agreement. So, but yeah, and we have another ongoing one that's been going on for 8 years. I mean, and that's what I like about, take a lot of pride in the company I work for, is we don't, you know, here, take this, or we're coming, you know. We'll work with you and spend some time to get it so we can both be comfortable and go forward, so. But, so let's talk about the split estate just a little bit. What split estate does is it gives the operator, after good faith negotiations, if he feels he can't get anywhere, the ability to come on your surface, put up a bond. He can do what's called non-disturbing activities like staking and things like that with a 5-day notice, okay? This was all in the legislature 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. And it gave the oil companies a mechanism, and the ranchers. It kind of was I don't know how the ranchers felt about it, you know, it wasn't, I don't know if they accomplished what they wanted to, but it only allows the oil company to come on your surface if they can access the leasehold. So say they have, as an example, say they have the east half of section 2, okay? So if there's a county road that runs down the middle of section 2, they have access off a public road to their leasehold. So they can use the split estate, but act if they cannot come to an agreement with you. Now, if you have the east half of 2 and the road goes down the west half of 2, then, and you own all of 2, then they cannot use split estate to cross that other half section. That has to be done by condemnation. So what you'll see is, you know, the Split Estate Act, so if you have a lease that is landlocked by private land all the way around it, then they have to make an agreement there or go through the condemnation process, which is lengthy and drawn out, not very pleasant for anybody. So it's one of those things that I've never had to do it, knock on wood, so.
How do they define good faith negotiation?
You know, you've got to have a lot.
Okay.
I mean, and I mean a lot, 2 or 3 years. Yeah, you just can't go out there and go, oh, you know, and you have to document your contacts and document your offers and everything you try to do and what you've negotiated, you know, give and take and all that stuff. Because when you go to court, you're there and it's no fun for anybody. So we avoid it at all costs. So, because the problem with condemnation is chances are nobody's happy that they're there when they get to that point. And the poor guys that have to work in the field, you know, have to deal with the rancher, and you know, and there's so much friction at that point. It's just, you know, it's not good. So, I mean, like I said, we try to avoid it at all costs. We really do. So, now I want to talk about a water mitigation agreement a little bit.
Dave, just for you, on split estate, do you want to make a comment about surface owner not owning the mineral rights?
What's that now?
The surface owner owning land, but not owning any
Right.
mineral rights.
But see, here's a confusion about split estate. They think that, okay, LD owns the surface here. LD owns the minerals. But what happens is LD's surface is in Gilbertz LLC. LD's minerals are in Gilbert's Mineral Trust LLC. That creates a split estate because it's two separate entities. Even though the same people may own it, it's two separate entities that own the surface and the minerals, and it becomes a split estate issue. It even becomes a split estate issue. And here's a prime example is that these two ladies own this land that their father and mother did. Well, it's split 50-50 between them, okay? So even though the one daughter owns 50% of the minerals under the land she owns, the other daughter owns the other 50%, so that creates your split estate issue. And a lot of people think, well, it's just because it's federal, fee doesn't count. But it can happen within the same family and creates it. So it becomes interesting. So water mitigation. You know, we've heard a lot of talk about water and contamination thereof. And I'm just going to briefly kind of just run down through this. And it just basically talks about circles of influence, and basically this is just something that's set up, and you guys can look through it and see, because this was more defined for the methane. I kind of tried to make it for oil, but if you feel that there's a potential for some contamination with oil, it might not be something you may want to look at possibly doing with your oil company. You know what I mean? You know, the thing about it is that when we were drilling methane, you actually drilled the coal for the methane gas was in the coal zone. And actually a lot of, depending on where you're at, a lot of the producers had methane wells that were coming out of the coal. They were artesian. And so that's where this kind of took place, because, you know, we were drawing down the water to get the gas off, and at the same point, they were also, you know, that was the pressure they were having to get the artesian wells. And unfortunately, in the area we were in, is that the artesian wells were old. They were drilled in the 40s. So basically, they were drilled with a rig, and it's just a 2-inch piece of pipe shoved in the ground. There's no casing, no pump, no pipe. It's just a 2-inch pipe. So you can't deepen it or do anything with it, you know. So that's where this originated. But it's just a means, and you can take a look at it to see about circles of influence and about impairments, you know, and all of that stuff. So, and it talks about the attorney's fees being borne by the individual parties and some things like that. But, come back up. But you'll see that right here is that sentence again. Therefore, in consideration of mutual covenants, you know, there's that binding language again that needs to be there. So, I think I have one more thing to show you. And this is your memorandum. Very simple. There's one thing I wanted to show you about this. And it just says this memorandum of the service use agreement made and entered into these days between the parties, blah, 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 blah. It's what involves the unfixed property legal description. You put the legal description with it, because when they enter it at the courthouse, if it's different properties, the clerk will make sure that these different, like not all my property is contiguous, but it'll make sure that it hits all these other different properties, you know, that service use agreement is enforced in. And it talks about compensation for owners, the access, other terms and conditions are described in the agreement. So that, then the important thing here is now with a change or two in the laws, you used to just owner, you signed your name, or operator, you signed your name. Now you got to give them what your title is. They've got to have a title. So if you're, you know, if you're owner, so you're president, operator, you know, say I'm the line department supervisor, that's what my name is, because they won't accept it without it. You know, so it has to be there. So you just tell them before you go to the courthouse, because if you go and it's not there, they'll send you home with it. So anyway, but that's, and of course these have to be notarized. Your signature has to be notarized on these, or they'll put them in there. So, because they're not any good without them. So that's all I have. Any questions?
What does the memorandum do?
Well, because we call this a private confidential agreement, the memorandum just lets say you're another oil company, or you're somebody looking, it says that an SUA exists on these lands.
Okay.
We're not telling you what's in it, but there is an agreement in place.
That's
So-
like the public purpose.
Yes, yes, yeah, so let's say that, you know, the oil company's selling and to another oil company, then the second oil company wants to do their due diligence to see what they're actually buying. It'll come and tell them, yes, there is a surface use agreement with this, and tell them what it is, it just tells them that there is one. Okay? Anything else? I know that's a lot of information, but that's all I have. How do I do, Bert?
Boy, that's just about right on. We actually, we're scheduled to switch rooms here in a minute or two, so if you don't mind filling out the evaluations
Yeah.
for us.